All right, welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is Luke Bricker. He's back on for a second episode. We had so much to talk about in the first one that we didn't have enough time. So today we're gonna dive into some really amazing esoteric topics. So, just to introduce Luke for the people that don't know, Luke is a minister in inner spiritual and interfaith, mystic teachings, and has the spiritual home for Christ-centered mystics. So, it's such an honor to have you on today, Luke.
Dude, thank you so much for having me back and looking forward to getting into the deep end of the pool today.
Yeah, bro, I'm stoked. Yeah, so I mean, we're gonna primarily focus on entity attachment, exorcisms, and then some miraculous miracles that happen for people that, you know, in this kind of world, it's more common than not, I would say, right?
Yeah. We don't always recognize it, but it's there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, uh, what are your thoughts? I'm really curious, like with your background. What are your thoughts? Can you give a little bit like a brief background on the type of space that you hold and uh, where where you're at right now with your offering?
Yeah, for sure. So today, like we were just talking about a little bit offline, I find myself in more of an interfaith or interspiritual worldview, but I come from a Christian background. I'm a pastor's kid, grew up in the church. I had a little, we shared this on the other episode, just a little bit different of a experience with that. But in my early 20s came to really be pursuing Christian ministry, became a pastor, ordained, all of that. And then, began to see through some of the dogma and doctrine that was there. And then I've come back around to faith in a way that's a lot different. So I look at the teachings and wisdom of Christ as a contributing voice to the worldwide wisdom traditions. So a lot of people think Christianity is in competition with other worldviews or spiritualities or religions. I don't think Christianity was ever supposed to be in competition. The only thing that it maybe be in competition to is the systems of this world or the principalities of darkness or things like that. But other Jesus, when he says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life," he was not thinking of Shiva in that moment. He was
Right.
talking against those who were quite literally oppressing their peers by getting in bed with politics and forcing them to buy pigeons to sacrifice that they couldn't afford and things like that. Like he was speaking to the religious elite, not other faith traditions. So today I view Christ's teachings as something that is meaningful and beneficial. And something I think we'll get into is that first and foremost, I think Jesus was a liberator spiritually, but also how that manifests in the physical realm.
Mhm.
The earliest gospel, you don't get through the first chapter without seeing that he's an exorcist. He's performing an exorcism. So I think in relationship to today's conversation too, I grew up in a charismatic background, which is kind of a version of Pentecostalism. So very much open to things of the spirit, of demonic influences, things like that. So I grew up with that as a kind of framework, dismissed that for a while, just venturing into more of a scientific realm, and then seeing it all being sort of connected together, that it's different language for a lot of the same things, seeing that there is potential for people to be under the influence of spirits and things that they don't maybe even know is influencing them and affecting them. So background with a lot of the spiritual entities and things, and still today have ventured into helping people work through some of that in their life.
Amazing, amazing. So, in your trainings, was there something like did they teach you how to perform exorcisms?
Yes, not necessarily in the way of like the way that the Catholic Church may perform. Like they have actual, ordained exorcists
Hmm.
in that tradition. What my tradition would teach is that we all have essentially equal authority to perform these things, but that we aren't the ones doing it. In the world that I come from, it's Jesus, the one that's doing it through me.
Right.
Um, and I still would kind of believe that, not necessarily Jesus specifically. I think that Jesus was doing the thing, and then he in his incarnation is no longer, and you step into the divine dance as the incarnation.
Hmm.
And so you do the same things that he did while he was here. So I don't think it's necessary to pray to Jesus for a miracle. I think going straight to source is what Jesus taught his disciples to do, like him, not to
Right.
keep adding more and more people you got to go through. He said, that the kingdom of heaven is within you, but it's among you. It's here. It's the ether. It's available. The dimension of divinity is at hand. And so in order to learn how to do that, I my background was in being taught to go through Jesus in his authority, in the name of Jesus is my background, is what we would be teaching. But while I think some of that has been sorted in different ways over the years, fundamentally though, there was the belief that we have the authority to aid people in being liberated from demonic captivity. And
Uh-huh.
yes, in my training and framework, by what I was exposed to at a young age, just by what was happening in the church, and then also in formal training as well of a prayer step model of how to engage and deal with these entities when you're faced with them. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think of how it seems as though one of the ways that these entities attach is through trauma,
Yeah.
right? Like a lot of times it can be sexual trauma or it can be some sort of physical trauma where somebody's like super vulnerable and in a space where they're just like so fearful and so in such a low like frequency and vibration that these entities are somehow there's some sort of door that opens for these things to kind of attach on to the
Yeah.
energetic field, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I believe that.
Yeah, it's it's really an interesting subject because for me, I've actually had certain items that I've
Mm.
actually picked up. Like I had a wallet that I hadn't touched since middle school, and I went back to my parents' house like around the time when I had my awakening, like almost 10 years ago, and I touched this wallet and I like close my eyes and I feel something, right? Like I'm feeling something happening to me and I close my eyes and I just see these like white claws with like blood dripping off of them. That's like all I see. And I'm like, "Whoa, this is gnarly.
Mm.
Like this something's trying to attached to me or trying to attack me, something like that, right? And I wasn't sure what to do, so I just kept connecting to that unconditional love. I just like would keep building up that love inside my heart, and then eventually I just felt the love like in every cell of my body, and this thing went away and dissipated.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because light will always drive any of that out. I think people often will get they'll hear topics like this, and we tend to like hyper, like we get like over sensationalized about them. And you know I don't actually talk about this stuff too often because I think maybe just the world that I come from, there's a temptation to make so big of a deal about it that people get kind of stripped of their authority and they walk around in fear. But
Right.
perfect love casts out all fear, my scriptures tell me.
Yeah.
So if I'm operating in that way, then I'm not tapping into that which is true from the source.
Hmm.
And so I think more and more times than not, like what you had there was a sort of autonomy in that moment, even as I'm listening to you. Like
Right.
you you have this vision, and there is an authority to say, am I going to align with unconditional love, or am I going to allow this thing to cling to me and attach? And whether we cling to it or it attaches to us, I think is maybe even semantics. Maybe it's a little bit of both. I mean, who knows, really,
Right.
the
Right.
percentage?
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes some in a weird, effed up way, we see those things and then we attach to them in the stories that they have, you know? And
Yeah.
sometimes with entities, it's not even as much about peeling their grip from us, but us peeling our grip from the thing.
Right.
We
Right.
find some sort of meaning and narrative and comfort in the pain, and it's yeah, it's a whole process.
Yeah, it makes me think about like when I was in middle school, I was like really having a hard time, like really just didn't have many friends. I just moved to another state where it was very conservative. I was like looked at as an outsider, I didn't really know anybody. And, I turned to music that was kind of like on that frequency that I was feeling, right? Where I listened to a lot of rap. I listened to a lot of Eminem, a lot of this like music that was reinforcing that feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a part of me felt like it was serving me because it was like, oh yeah, if I can be tough like these guys singing, then nobody will mess with me or I won't have these issues with other kids or whatever that I was going through in middle school.
Right.
And so yeah, it's like without that awareness, I felt like that frequency was somehow helping me, you know?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and it's interesting because I feel like that's happening to a lot of people. They may feel sad or they might go through a breakup and then they listen to more sad music and it kind of like keeps them in that loop in that cycle. And when I realize that I have control over that and I can actually shift this and not fall into that,
Mm-hmm.
then everything started to shift.
Right. Right. Because you ultimately are an emanation of the source, therefore you are co-creating and have the ability to step into that. And there's even, I don't want to maybe get too distracted on this, but the music element I think is important because I had a hard time in middle school and high school and things as well. And,
Mhm.
I still love heavy music. Like I was in hardcore bands and death metal bands, and still do a little grindcore project with a friend, and I think
Yeah.
in some of my spiritual spaces, people are like, well, that's aggressive. That's the music. That's, angry music. And it's like, well, everything has a dimension of light and dark to it. And I think that if we don't deal with some of the things within us, they ooze out in unhealthy ways. And I actually think hardcore music and very violent and aggressive music is a healthy pressure release valve for me,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a paradox. It's an oxymoron because sometimes I don't listen to all the time, but like moments where I listen to super heavy. The genre is literally called power violence. I
Oh,
mean,
wow. Okay.
so it's like what spiritual teachers walking around listening to power violence,
Right.
but
Right.
it's like there's a there is a purpose in that, and I think the Eastern mind understands this more. That's why we have deities like Kali and other things, that represent the more difficult, darker things of life, right? Like
Yeah.
the Western mind tends to only think in that there's just only light and doesn't see the value in potential darkness. And so I think for me, even kind of merging this back to our original thing is like learning how to discern, I think, is the highest practice of spirituality. Like, meditation, of course, these things, but what is that doing? It's bringing clarity so that I can discern how to operate in my action in life. So I don't repeat my actions, which is karma, right? Like
Right.
I have to understand how I live and move and have my being, and I have to discern what is right for me in that. And so I'm not saying that like dark entities are good. I'm saying they do serve a purpose though, for liberation, for clarity, just like heavy music serves a pressure release valve for in other ways that I might be a little too aggressive whenever I'm in road rage or whatever. Maybe I don't have that now because I had, some heavy breakdown going on that I was
Right.
able to just dissipate that. So I think discerning it all as light and dark, that it's the yin and yang of life, of how it flows.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's part of it.
that's a really good point because also the on the other spectrum of it, right? Like if I'm feeling a little bit low, I'll put on some really nice mantra or I'll put on some really nice like calm, relaxing music and it very quickly shifts my frequency into that higher
Yeah.
space, you know? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, music is it seems is a really powerful way to either go into a space where you need to feel some anger or feel some sadness or into a space where you just want to elevate from that and not
Yes.
like clear it in a different way, you know?
Yeah.
Uh,
Or even like and I know we don't want to stick here too long, but like if I my other some other day job stuff that I do that's very, numbers on pages, I will listen to some music to hit me in the heart space that I actually do want to feel a degree of emotion and tears,
yeah, yeah,
Like it might have been a great work day, but I want to feel that heart humanness, and like using these as modes and methods as vibrations for that, But on the exorcism part of things,
yeah, yeah,
I know we want to kind of get back to some of that, but I
yeah.
think this is a good sidetrack. There are no tangents, man. I don't believe in tangents anymore.
No, no, no. That it's important. Somebody may be benefiting from this, you know? So, yeah, across the world, pretty much in every culture, there's some sort of version of this, right? Like there's native cultures around the world, shamans in those cultures. They're performing these kind of things. They're just not calling it exorcisms, right? It's more of a Christian term, I would say, right?
I'd say.
For releasing some sort of entity or some sort of energetic attachment to our vessel, right?
Hmm.
It could be attached to our auric field, to our energy bodies, or to our like myofascia, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Which is what connects all of our cells, all of our muscles, all of our fat cells, everything. It's like a sheet across our body.
Yeah.
And I've had some really profound myofascial unwindings where I'm releasing and I'm actually like seeing that I have to physically unwind my body and I think that's you know, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what's happening sometimes in these exorcisms where you're seeing people's chests rise up and they'll start making twitches and all these movements. And from my understanding right now is that that's like like physically unwinding these like I've seen them as claws, like
Mm.
in our myofascia that are more energetic than anything. And then they get to unwind, and then we get to choose to release this thing with love, or with force, or however way that the facilitator is doing it, right?
Hmm.
And saying like, okay, I release you back to the light, back to source to get alchemized.
Yeah. 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 I think it's something to remember that anything that's happening in the material is an emanation of spiritual,
Yeah.
and so it's all energy, and it is all in some ways spirit, um, in different forms. And I think it does attach to us physically, and sometimes it does take that. That's why I think, like you teach Reiki, in my tradition, we had a very specific way of how to pray for people by the laying on of hands in prayer
Mhm.
and discerning what parts of the body in prayer, even in prayer language, we call this speaking in tongues, of how to and where to release tension and in that language of that tradition, demonic holdings on the person. This would be, maybe I would use language where there's bound up energy now that needs loosed. And even Jesus, Master Yeshua, who's, one of my main gurus of all time, I follow his teachings, and he says, "Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven, and whatever you bind will be bound." And I think that that takes us into this idea of there's this world, this dimension of reality that we exist in with our body, and then there's this spiritual ether kingdom of God dimension, heaven. Heaven in the original language just means the skies above.
Mm,
So it doesn't mean some place where people are sitting on clouds and playing harps and whatever. It's the skies above, it's the ether around you, it's the unseen realm of spirit.
mm,
That's what heaven is. Not a destination, but a reality and a invitation to consciousness.
mm-hmm.
If you have eyes to see and ears to hear, as Yeshua says. So
Right.
um, and what he was doing was quite literally walking around and seeing in the spirit what was attached to people and loosing from them the grips of bondage. That's what he was famous for. He
Right.
was actually not famous initially because he was a preacher or anything like that. He was famous because he was loosing entities from people, and people would come to him from distance for that to happen. And it does happen in the material. Like your body will respond to that. In the same way that if you have an ecstatic experience, I find that my body will respond to that because this is the antenna. This is the thing that it's all being. Your soul in this body, it's it's incarnated. That's so it's here in this vessel, and this is the the thing that is here experiencing it. So of course it's going to react in certain ways to whatever you're experiencing. And I think that there is some sort of actual loosing of a person, grips being let go of, whether if that is just psychological, if that is just spiritual. I mean, I trust that, you know, divinity will work all the details of it. I
Right.
just do the best to discern in the moment of what's necessary.
Yeah.
And if liberation is there, like that's the evidence,
Right.
that's all across traditions, across cultures, everyone is seeking to be free. That is hands down all spiritual paths is freedom.
Right.
And for freedom, Christ has set you free, the apostle says.
Mm.
And I think that's what he came to do, is to bring liberation, just like any shaman is doing today. They're
Yeah.
seeking to liberate people from their bondage and turmoil, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, what can you share any experiences that you've had personally or like witnessing of people going through this?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Probably one of the most, there's you know, many that have happened, but probably the one that's most significant that's coming up is I was a young fervent preacher, pastor,
Mm.
and I preached on Sunday, and it was a large church, so we had 2 Saturday night services, 3 on Sunday morning. So same message at all of them. And I got done preaching after the last service on a Sunday, and I was a youth pastor. This was in like the big adult church, the big people, whatever. So, but I had some youth students there, and she brought her sister up, and she was with her mom, and she had an older sister who was acting violently and speaking in lower tones, and wanted to see if I could help with that. And so there was another woman there who was on our prayer team who I felt like had some wisdom and authority, and so we went into a side room with her. We started praying with her there at the stage, and she began to manifest another personality completely, uh, against her will, seemingly. And
Uh-huh.
even when she was standing there, you could just see the best way I can explain it is like, if anybody's familiar with the Lord of the Rings,
Hmm.
and I think it's in the second movie where um, you can see the king that's possessed, his eyes just there's not much eye contact. They're looking away. It's
Like glazed over.
glazed, yes, and there is a sense of darkness there, and it's a very much the eyes are the window to the soul, you know,
Yeah.
and they are, you can tell it's like there is a filter. There's some like filter there,
Mhm.
and so she was acting a little erratic. So we brought her into another room. And then another older elderly woman, she's a Pentecostal lady, who had been coming to the church for a long time. And she came in and I was praying with her and I was getting really doing what I was taught though, honestly. And I was very much trying to be authoritative and, speak to the demon to give me its name and all of these things, and to in the name of Jesus, this and the blood of Jesus, just everything that I was taught to know how to do. And what was incredible is that this elderly woman, after some time, we've spent some ample time with this the older sister who she was in her mid 20s, and the elderly woman, she just calmly put her hand on my shoulder and she said, "Let's give her a break for a little bit."
Uh-huh.
And I was like, that's not warfare. This is
Right.
supposed to be spiritual warfare. I'm not
Right.
gonna back down until this thing lets go of her. And
Yeah.
but her presence of just calm, just being, just I was like, okay. And she just grabbed the girl's hand and started speaking to her. And then it's like you could see her come through. And then something would come over her. And this elderly woman would just say, just in grandma like tone, but
Uh-huh.
like certain, she says, "We're not speaking to you right now. We'll deal with you later."
Right. Right.
And I just was like, that's all it took.
Uh-huh.
And because I kept trying to get down to the person, and the entity just wouldn't let her look at us or talk or anything. But this gentle, authoritative grandmother woman, after an hour, comes in and just tells it that we'll talk to it later, but we're here to talk to whoever now. And she came through and just started weeping. I mean, just lost it. She's worn out, and
Yeah.
she was just weeping and holding on to this woman, this elderly woman, and just kept telling her, "I'm sorry, I don't know what to do," you know. And I thought it was just such a learning experience for me of how I teaching moment really for me, that I've been able to take that into the future, that I could speak to another instance um, in a moment. Hopefully my story's not going too long, but
No, it's great.
um, and then she's just said, let's schedule another time to meet in here next Sunday. And that was a trip for me because I'm like, you're going to let this person just leave with this thing attached to
Mhm.
her.
Yeah.
And she said, basically, more or less, in my language now, all these years later, is God has her.
Uh-huh.
Like, like God's God has her. It's gonna be all right. Like, and just this surrendering. I mean, she wouldn't have this language for it, but just this surrendering of the person to God. That I'm not the savior here.
Right.
The only thing I'm doing is helping to facilitate a space for love and light and truth to come. Truth means revealing in the Greek, to reveal the fact that she doesn't have to have this attached to her anymore, because who knows how much she's been holding on to that. So all that to say is, over a few sessions, um, she was able to become liberated. But it took like 4 or 5 sessions
Uh-huh.
of coming back and slowly but surely chipping away, and mentoring this woman back to herself and her authority of who she is in divinity.
Mhm.
So that helped me later whenever I've had instances with people who are demonic, to be a lot more calm. Nobody's here trying, you know, we try to get aggressive and abrasive, but that's, truthfully, that's the way of the world, is force.
Right.
And if I
Masculine.
really know my
Masculine.
authority, I don't need to use force.
Right.
Like that elderly woman, she said, "We'll deal with you later," and it
Right. Right.
it
So
let go.
yes. Yeah. So the actual shift when it happened, I'm really curious about that. Do you feel like the 20-year-old woman 20-something-year-old woman was able to like see her power, like step into her power and be like, I don't need to hold this anymore. I can release it. Do you think that that's what the major shift was?
For her, ultimately, and this is again just the playground that I was in, is um she in herself had to trust that God and the image that we were using was Jesus, um, was going to dismantle that and essentially fill that void with divine Jesus presence in
Right.
her life.
Hmm.
So where it would differ from where I'm at now is, it was a this sounds really, I'm not sure how this is going to come out. So I'm just going to say it and we'll deal with it. But she had to replace the attachment of the entity with the figure of Jesus in that place. So
Right.
she could have something then still as an image to grab onto. And I think that's fair for people. I mean, look, if holding Jesus, who arguably I think Christians use as an idol, that's probably another conversation. You know, like if that's still better than being in bondage from an entity that was dictating her life and making her act in erratic ways that was violent to her family,
Right.
like she got really involved with church then and very into worship and thing. And it's like, but she didn't realize her own authority in that it is hers, but it had to come in the packaging of Jesus
Got
in
it.
that tradition.
Got it.
um but it's still, again, it's still better than where she started,
Yeah, yeah, for
so.
sure. So what happened? What actually happened? I'm just trying to get to like what was actually happening when it left. Like
Mm.
did she convulse? Did she like did you see anything leave? Did you experience any energy? Like did you what actually happened when it left?
And that's the thing that I think has been one of the biggest teaching points to me is it was like a fader switch. Like, so first, when she first came, it was very erratic and her body was very compulsive and jolty. And when we were praying for her, very, like, not complete head spinning, but I see where that exaggeration comes from because their head violently goes because back and forth, and her body was very reactive to it and very just, you didn't know maybe if this person was going to punch you, even, like it was
Right,
very just, her body was experiencing that when it left. And this is why I think it's interesting that it happened over sessions, because it was more like a fader switch. It's like peace just started to settle in more and more, and the erratic nature of the body and its convulsion in terms of its, she wasn't like convulsing like somebody's like losing oxygen on a bed, but like was convulsing with, like, shoulder twitches and like leg spasms and things. All of that just slowly would die down, and you would see the fog dissipate. And so I think part of what was a great teaching moment for me is that it was less dramatic. The result was less dramatic than I expected. It was more dramatic at the beginning.
right,
It was because, I mean, as soon as I walked down the stage and saw her in her eyes and her shoulders jerking, it's like, something's messed up. Something is not in tune here,
mhm,
Um, but when it relinquished from her and released, and I've not kept in touch with them over the years. Again, this is, probably, let's see, 14 years ago,
yeah,
at this point.
yeah,
So, um, but yeah, I think that when it was released, I think what any of us would hope for is that the conversation was grounded, it was embodied, the person was here,
right,
you could converse with her, she would look you in the eyes, you could see a sense of brightness come back. All these things are very subtle, but they're there and they're real. And so I think, yeah, the big one of the many lessons is that it's sometimes less dramatic than that. But
mhm,
when the entity is there, it can be pretty dramatic. I have another story I could tell as well of a person that had a weapon. So, you know,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, wild stuff.
Yeah. So, as you're speaking about her shoulder convulsions and things like that, I've had training in myofascial unwinding because I have a background in physical therapy. And I went and did 2 week training with John Barnes, who's an expert in myofascial unwinding.
Mm,
And that was really interesting because there was like 100 people in the room at one point, and we're all working on each other, and he's guiding us, and yeah, a lot of that's happening, you know.
mm,
And for me, it was like my body was unwinding, and then when it was unwinding, I would tap into like past lifetimes and different
mm,
traumas that I had blocked out. Like there was one time when I was a kid, uh, this other young boy tried to drown me,
mm.
and so I started making movements like I'm trying to swim up out of the water,
Wow.
and in that moment, as I'm unwinding that, those memories came back because they were blocked out, and
Mm,
so I think that my fascial unwinding can work on different layers like that. It can be like bringing the trauma back up to be reintegrated and to be looked at and change the story altogether so it can be part of your story to share and help others, or it can lead to something like an exorcism if somebody is holding the space in the right way, and
yeah.
it's really interesting, like these kind of topics where it's like the physical body and what it knows how to do, like
Mm,
naturally when the mind gets out of the way, what the physical body knows how to do versus like something controlling it, right?
yeah.
So I think there's a difference between that and like when I go on and like fully relax and just like go into that theta state, my body will start to unwind, and what'll happen is it'll align my neck, it'll align my spine, it'll just like realign me, and then I can go way deeper into meditation and tap in way quicker when my
Yeah.
spine and everything is lined up and my I'm physically everything's physically where it needs to be.
Yeah. I'm curious for you, like, how do you navigate? Because it seems like there's a couple different things happening, and I think sometimes they, cross pollinate some, but it's like one is really a trauma experience that happened that's coming up. And even like with that, it's like you now know the methods of how to align even yourself. Like you can work on with other people and they can work on you, but even you are developing. I'm sure it's probably a lifelong process of how to keep coming back to center. But then there's other instances where it's like they're not even in the driver's seat anymore. Like kind of
Right.
like the story I was talking about. Like she, I don't think she could even have been conscious enough to even be at a conference and do anything like that, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
like how is that for you and your interpretation?
yeah, I'm fully aware the whole time. I'm fully aware of what's happening, and I'm fully able to just surrender and let my body realign. And it's interesting because when my teacher in school, physical therapy assistant school, when she was teaching this, some people they'd have like a little wrist movement, and it starts with uh, basically you can start by like putting a little bit of pressure under the suboccipital ridge,
Hmm.
and or like stretching the neck so that like these larger muscles of the myofascia can start to like loosen and open up, and then from there it really starts to uh, so it takes time for people, and if people are way too much in their mind, it just no matter how much you work on them, it's very much connected to the mind of getting into that space of full surrender, right? But it's not anything. It just feels like my body naturally knows what to do to realign. And then when it's realigned, I'll know, and there'll just be like this full relaxation. Okay, it's done. And because
Yeah.
I'll feel it, like I'm very connected to my body, so I'll feel when I have a vertebrae out in my neck or in my back, and like and when I go into that space, the chi machine actually really helps me. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's like a machine where you put your ankles and it'll oscillate you, and you're laying on your back, and it's just moving the chi in your body. And then when it stops, there's like this rush of chi that flows through your body. The
Mm.
Tibetan monks do this where they'll hold each other's ankles and oscillate in the morning every day. And so,
Wow.
yeah, and so in that space, then when the body fully relaxes, then it can really realign. And so it's really interesting because, with these kind of techniques, if people are able to go into those spaces, they can heal things like scoliosis and all these things in their body where they're
Yeah.
holding all this trauma and tension in their myofascia. And if they allowed the body to just realign, then it would heal. And so, animals do this all the time, where you see a bear, it's getting hunted, it'll run, and then once it's safe, it'll lay down, it'll just twitch for an hour, rewiring the nervous system and integrating what just happened. But for people, we don't do that. We go into a car accident, and we're just, okay, I'm going to work,
Right. Right.
but like those things at some point need to be reintegrated into the body. And
Yes.
and so that's part of what was happening to me. It's like that trauma of the drowning had to be be felt, remembered, integrated, and then released.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yes. And
it,
I
it,
think
it
that's, yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting.
And it's important work because the somatic work I feel like is something that is starting to become a little bit more popular now, where people are understanding that like they have to let this go. And the reason that they're getting sick is because of things that actually don't even first exist in the physical realm. It's in the mental, it's in the
Right,
spiritual, and we're seeing it like what we're saying earlier is it will manifest itself because whatever is in heaven in the spiritual plane will be bound or loosed in the earth in the body. And so you have the authority to bind that up or to loose that. And coming into awareness, I think, is some of the first steps to doing that and realizing that there are things I'm holding on to that are binding themselves up within me in different places. And
right.
people are learning how to unwind and unbind themselves from their stuff. But I think that first comes from having the I don't know if you want to call it courage or just maybe dark nights of the soul or just life breaks you in a certain way, but you have to be able to walk into those darker places um, to be able to then dismantle them and dissolve them. You know,
Right,
like guru means dissolver of darkness, right?
right.
So like if anything that we're seeking to do is we need to meet that guru within us that's going to help dissolve that darkness. But it first means acknowledging there is that there's
Yeah,
trauma there's pain, there's stuff that you're not even aware of. I think bringing that into light first is the first step in being able to be free from it, and then learning though, like what you're talking about, not just, and this is some of my issue with some of uh spirituality in the areas that I live here in San Diego that you're familiar with, how we know each other, is like
mhm,
it stays conceptual, you know?
right,
It's just like fun ideas. You talk about drinking matcha,
right.
and it's not that.
No,
Like I believe that there is a liberation from soul here that's available, and that I have to actually unbuckle and go into those dark places to be able to have some sort of transformation, and that I'm going to stay on the wheel as long as it takes
right.
for that to happen. I it's more than like Instagram algorithm information to me. And I think that it has to become that in the body, what you're talking about, it gets really real, because I don't think people know what to do when they start, like, they watch a YouTube video about this or they listen to this podcast, and then something starts happening in their body, like, holy shit, this isn't just a something I listened to.
Right.
Like, in meditation, the thing I've been doing so much lately is like not just being stuck on the spiritual text that I just read, but like this is real. Like this is happening.
Yeah,
And when your body starts showing you that, it can be some people they move away from that. They're comfortable in the dream.
right,
And no judgment. It's okay. I bet you I've been in here many lifetimes that I've been comfortable with the dream, or else I wouldn't be back here again right now.
right, right.
I'm starting, and I might be back again.
Who
That's not
knows?
up to me.
Right,
But I think that um, it is up to me, and it's not all at the same time. I'll say, but
right.
all this to say, little again, I'm trying to not believe in tangents anymore. They're there for a reason. But what you're talking about when it shows up in the body, it gets real, and many people they it doesn't click with them until that happens. You know.
Yeah.
So with you now, I feel like I'm having you on my podcast, but
You're a great
so
host, man.
dude, with you, how have you seen people respond to their own body reactions? Like, even so, yourself, like you're learning how to navigate that. But if that comes on fresh for somebody who you're working with, like, how do you know? Like, what does that look like for them? Have you seen fear or have you seen freedom? Like, what are some of the things you see?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people, there has to be that state of surrender that I mentioned, right? Where it's like you have to be open to whatever comes up,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're not in that space, if you're too much in your mind, it's not going to start happening. It's
Yeah.
just not, unless it's something like what you were explaining, where it's like something's just controlling the person, right? But for these other layers, it's like it happens. The people that are ready, they come to you, to me, right? Like to the facilitator, and they say, okay, I'm ready for this, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
it'll be their family or whoever, right? Who will be like, okay, something's off here, right? But for the people that I work with and have worked with, it's like they come willingly desiring to move this energy, you know?
Have they had some experience that's moving them to that point
Yeah,
already
I mean it's
then?
different. It's different for every person, but mostly, yeah, like they're, people have had different experiences where they know how to surrender, where they know how to just fully let go, and that is the key component to this,
Mm-hmm.
to fully be able to let go and not try to control it,
Yeah.
which, in today's society, everybody's trying to control everything in their reality, right? A lot, not everybody. I can't say everybody. Some people, right? But the people that are able to find that surrender and find that true aspect of like, okay, when I let go, there is some miracles and magic that I don't understand,
Yeah.
that is really hard, almost impossible for the mind to understand, that may happen if I really go into that space, And like I said, I didn't remember getting potentially like this kid trying to drown me. I didn't remember that anymore. But
Mm.
in that space of theta, in that meditative space, I was able to access that memory at the same time as my body was making the movements of me trying to swim up from getting drowned.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like did you watch the OA on Netflix? Do you remember that series? It's been some years now.
I
But
think I've seen like one or two episodes. Yeah.
they do body these they figure out these body movements to like jump timelines to other
Mm,
things that they're having, you know?
yeah.
And rumor has it that Netflix says that it just lost interest in funding. That's why they didn't film anymore. Um, but I don't know how that's true because it was such a popular thing. And rumor is that it was getting a little too real
Uh-huh.
and potentially some conspiracies that like, with CERN and things like that, and it was like, this is connecting the physical and the metaphysical like that is it's too actually how this whole thing works, and we don't want people understanding how this whole thing works,
Right, right. And
you know.
it just keeps people trapped.
Yes,
It
yes.
keeps people in certain programs and certain cycles in the fear, and the fear is getting siphoned in some way or shape, right? Like something is potentially feeding off that fear at
Yeah.
some level, right? So they wouldn't be creating so much fear all the time in the news and stuff like that if that wasn't happening, right?
Right.
So it's like this, at least that's my belief, right? Like I have no idea of, I have no way of, you know, proving that, right? But at least not now. But it's there's these aspects of liberation, like you're saying, of this freedom that come on from these experiences, and you know, there's other ways of getting there, but I've found that through the body I've been able to access these other layers of trauma that have been blocked out.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah,
through
so
that, you're able to unbuckle that and sort it and integrate it in a way that's healing, you know?
yeah, yeah, and it's like now that I know that this happened and I can reconstruct the story of why this little boy tried to drown me, right? I can be like, okay, he was probably, beat up on by his dad or whatever, and he was just going through it. He was a little 9-year-old boy. Like I can't be mad at a little 9-year-old boy. So I just released it, forgave him, and then now I don't need to carry that into any other relationships or any other interactions I have with people, and
Yeah.
I think that is the deeper work that a lot of people don't really talk about or even know about, So that's why, it's important to share these things.
Yeah. I think even one of the benefits of the tradition that I come from is the value of prayer and in that sort of like liberating kind of way. And even though it's in a very clothed in doctrine and dogma and tradition and hierarchy and all this other stuff, I always say that, I don't think that God's checking IDs at the door, for like
Yeah.
what tradition you come from, what language. It's all about that heart and
Right.
that. So they use a lot of language and imagery and things that I'm not aligned to anymore, but the vibration of the heart is there, and the body doesn't care if you are saying Holy Spirit or what. Like it's the intention and the vibration and the loosening of the self and all of that. And that's one thing I do appreciate. I think more churches aren't capitalizing on their ability to do the thing that the master told them they could do. And that is quite literally liberate and free people from spiritual and psychological oppression and bondage. And some of those things that you read, maybe we do want to talk about miracles or things like some of the things that you read are embellished or whatever. Some of these things are like, well, now we know, like sometimes if you have like a parasite, you can have some of this stuff. Now in modern medicine, we know this. And then some things are authentic that people are being freed from, but I think in the tradition of Christ, the one that I come from, like the very thing that I think they could be helping people the most with in the world, they're not really tapping on that anymore. And it happens in very secluded ways. And it's like they care more about like everybody like regurgitating the same belief thoughts instead of like actually helping people get freed up, which Yeshua, first and foremost, was known as, again, an exorcist
Right.
and one who brought spiritual liberation. And not just because people said a sinner's prayer at an altar, like you never see that once in the guy's life. But what you see him doing is walking around identifying things that are binding people up and freeing them up. So I
Yeah.
think Christianity could be a very helpful presence for liberating people from all this stuff in the world. Instead, they're interested in, who you vote for and stuff, whatever. But I digress.
Yeah, dude. Well, I'm really curious. It brings up a question. Why do they say, I've never really dug into this. Maybe you know the answer. Why do they say cover yourself in the blood of Christ?
Yeah. So there's a lot with that to try to keep it brief. Jesus talks about laying his life down for people. He does talk about that he can lay his body down and he can take it up again. Very metaphysical thing. Um, he talks about him being, the son of God, but it's not necessarily like he has this own one special thing. Later, we have ideas about blood, and really what they're trying to do is connect his life to a Judaism framework of sacrifices, that God is pleased with people based on the sacrifices that they give and the blood of these different animals that are shed to cover sins, or they have all these different things and different holidays that they do sacrifices for specific things. And they say that Jesus,
like real animal sacrifices.
back in the day, real animal, I'm not sure if people are practicing that in the modern day, but certainly in ancient times, it was real animal sacrifice. And in the Hebrew scriptures, even saying that, it's the aroma of the blood that's pleasing to Adonai, like it's
Oh,
very kind of fucked up,
sounds kind of demonic to me, right? Like it sounds like that other side.
It's very weird. All I will say though, animal sacrifice is in all ancient traditions and cultures, and even our ancient understandings of Eastern religions have involved animal sacrifices, or even in Central America, things, there's even human sacrifices. And I think, funny enough, Christians don't realize that they are the largest human sacrifice cult today.
Wow.
If you think about it,
Right.
they think that um, a person dying, sacrificing unto God a person's life, that there is grace and peace from that blood atonement. Um, and when you frame it like that, Christians don't like that very much.
Right.
But Jesus himself, A, didn't want to start a religion. That
Right.
was not his intention. B, if a religion was started, it was never to worship him.
Right.
Not once do you ever have him saying that anybody should worship him in any way, shape, or form in the Greek language in all translation. Um, Furthermore, you don't have any instance of Jesus um, advocating that his blood is paying some sort of cosmic debt
Mm,
whenever he's sacrificed on the cross. He's talking about how he lays his life down more like a scapegoat than a Passover lamb.
mm.
That's, and to those who have a Christian background will understand some of that nuance a little bit, but um, basically it's a mirror of showing what humans do to purity and to divinity. We tend to martyr it, kill it.
Yeah.
So when people say covering in the blood of Jesus, I don't um, I don't align with that sort of orthodoxy anymore. I don't think that's a very Paul, the Apostle Paul. His writings are the earliest writings, and he speaks a lot um, about Jesus' blood and paying debts and sins. Oh gosh, somebody's at my front door. Pause
Yeah,
one
I'll pause
second.
it. Pause
I'm
it.
sorry.
So we were talking about how you started to mention Paul and how
Yeah,
he was referring to the blood of Christ.
yeah. So basically, you get someone who actually didn't meet Jesus in the flesh. He had a vision. He had a experience with Jesus that only he experienced. Essentially, if you want to get real fun with it, a psychedelic trip without any substances,
Right, right.
and has this vision. And then he goes and he studies, and he creates this framework that is, people even that were in the Jesus space at the time were unsure how or if his worldview is going to fit. I think it's important to mention that early Christianity had extreme diverse of opinions about many different things, some super far out, some more what you see today. Paul's view ultimately kind of won the orthodoxy thing. But to your point on the blood of Jesus, his view, because he comes from a Jewish background of understanding sacrifice, is that Jesus is the sacrifice, the last and final sacrifice that's needed. And now we have a different relationship with God because Jesus paid a debt that humanity needed to pay to God, essentially. And now we can use his blood basically to remind the world or remind demonic entities or remind whoever who's really in charge here, and that is God, because there's all forgiveness and there's heaven available to us. And so now people, Christians, say in the blood of Jesus or in the name of Jesus, because they say basically they elevate Jesus to the highest place of authority over the physical plane. And they use the stories of scripture to justify his authority over his, like when, and maybe we should do a third episode talking about the miracles, but
Right.
because he like calms waters and like he curses a fig tree and like it doesn't produce fruit the next day. Like he has this authority or whatever. So Christians say we go in that under his sacrificial blood because now we are okay with God because he did that. And because of his blood, we can use his authority to kind of right the wrongs of the world, if you will.
Okay. So the way I'm kind of filtering it through my lingo and things like that is like his blood is a representation of his frequency and his like it's almost like a protection from anything else. And because he gave himself, uh, sacrificed himself, that blood is a very high form of protection that people can imagine over themselves.
Pretty much. Yeah. Like even in my upbringing, people call it like a hedge of protection. And
Hmm.
what they mean by that is it's kind of a reference back to Exodus. If you remember the story at all, whenever the plague is coming through and God instructs the Israelites to put the blood over the door frame so that the spirit of death will pass over their house and not kill their firstborn child.
Hmm.
So they kind of take Jesus as being that kind of blood as a hedge over us so that the spirit of death or, demonic things will pass over our home, if you will, our body, and not touch us because Jesus' blood is above us, if
I
you will,
see.
as a protection.
Okay.
But that's drenched in Jewish thought and idea,
Hmm.
which I don't think is wrong or bad. And I don't want to be dismissive of it in any way. But I definitely, if you just look at Jesus from what we have in the Bible and the extra biblical things that we have, he wasn't really hinting at that at all.
Uh-huh.
If you really want to be truthful about it,
Right.
he was here to show you. He says, I can only see what my father in heaven is doing, which is the father, not meaning, a cosmic male parent, but the source of all creation of the same DNA. Your father, you share same DNA. You're of the offspring of, you're an image, offspring, child of that divinity. And he says, I don't do anything in my own will. So it's like relinquishing desire. It's not my preference and aversion. I'm seeing with clear insight into the order of divinity and patterning to that. And then he says, and the same things I do, I give to you. You'll do even greater things than me.
Right.
And so he seems to be showing them, his disciples, a way to live like him in union with the source and imparting that ability to them to be freed from their religion that tells them that they need sacrifices, and actually saying you don't actually need any of that.
Mm.
You already have everything you need within you.
Right.
You need to realize that.
Right.
And so his is more of a process of realization. He says the kingdom of God is at hand. Everybody was looking for this external thing to come. He's like, it's already here.
Right.
And he says, though he who has an ear, let him hear. And some people are going to get it and some people aren't.
Yeah.
And that's that.
That's just how it goes.
So I don't think I'm not into the blood thing anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Cause
It,
yeah,
it seems like I would rather, for me personally, I would rather like call upon Jesus to come and be in my presence or surround myself with my angels or my guardians, and that resonates more for me.
yeah. And I think that, there's a lot of different metaphysical ways you could look at Jesus, which, you know, maybe he is existing in some, I think his spirit is, but if some people believe his physical body ascended, some people think it wasn't. It was a lot of different things we could talk about that, but I do think his presence, his incarnation was extremely powerful, or else it wouldn't have changed the world in the way that it did.
Yeah.
And I think that there is something. that's common in him that that unites all tradition really back to liberation and wholeness.
Yeah.
You know, just as a capstone, I think here at the end is people think that the gospel is that Jesus' blood paid for your sins so that you could be forgiven and God wouldn't hate you anymore and you don't have to go to hell. That's what people think the gospel is. But Jesus himself in the Gospel of Luke chapter 4 says that he shares what the gospel is in his view. And he references an old text from the Old Testament where it's basically it's the year of Jubilee. It's the blind would see and the lame would walk, and the year of the Lord's favor is here. And that's what gospel means, is
Mm.
freedom and liberation. I think maybe physically he's performing those miracles, but especially spiritually, that the eyes would see, that the lame would walk. It's like, yeah, that you would live in the fullness of what it means to be human in your divinity, the
Yeah.
human divine self. That's what's the good news, is that's here and available now. He didn't die yet when he said that. This is
Uh-huh.
before all of that.
Right.
So, there's that's better news to me than needing somebody to die so some supreme authority divinity doesn't hate me anymore.
Yeah, it just it doesn't really resonate for me. It's like
Yeah,
I get the concept of a guru like taking on other people's karma, like Yogananda says. I've, you know, kind of started to understand that more, but even so, it's like everybody has their karma that they need to move through, and it's just why I believe it's part of Earth School, why we're here is to resolve those things that could have been potentially going on for many lifetimes.
totally. I agree with that. And some people would think that Jesus took it on the karma of the world and dealt with it. That's fun to consider, and maybe that's true. I think with anything, it's a good posture to have. Is maybe that's true.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Maybe
Yeah,
that's true.
maybe I like to say that now lately. It's like
But I'm gonna do the
I don't
best I
know.
can still. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna be like,
Yeah.
oh, Jesus took care of that, or my guru took care of that. So now
Yeah,
I can just what like I'm gonna if that's even true, I'm gonna honor that the best I can
for
by
sure.
living in as tune as I can.
Yeah,
So
for sure. And I do think that there are moments where these downloads or insights or visions that people have are guiding them in a way, and potentially it could be Jesus or Yogananda or one of our teachers
yeah,
guiding us from that car accident if we would have turned left, or not just listening to that higher self voice, which you know has saved my life several times.
totally. I mean, that's discernment. That's the spiritual ear that hears.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I love it. We got more. We
Dude,
got
I feel
more.
like
How do we have more?
we just scraped the surface, man. We didn't even get. Man, okay. Well, that was awesome. Yeah, we'll probably have to do a part three at some point. But yeah, that was really good, man. Thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for your presence, and until next time, brother. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
All right, take care, brother.